This comes up a lot, and so I thought I'd explore it and talk a little bit about, so many of these things that we aspire to realize in life and in sort of spiritual pursuits. Um, it's very easy to fall into that notion that these things like the ground of being, presence, awareness, these different terms, openness, are um, the presence of these things depends upon something, essentially, depends upon those, you could say, perspectives or experiences being, recognized. Like, oh, there's the presence, and then there's that sense of, not recognizing it, for example, or a sense of being. And really, what I'm pointing to is that these things, there is one aspect. If you take presence, for example, or something like awareness, uh, there can be this experience of, let's say, doing something to recognize presence, to become more present, more here, more aware, and so on, and then have that sense that whatever things happen, and suddenly the sense is that that's been lost somehow, right? So we're, as with language, we're often thinking about those terms in terms of, this is the problem with language, is that any word really suggests that which is not that word, right? So this word pen refers to a phenomena, um, and distinguishes this phenomena from things that are not pens, right? Like whatever, the space around the pen or the phone here or whatever. So when we start using words to describe the nature of reality, and these things that we seem to be searching for as humans, um, it's really tricky, right? Because the word sort of conjures up, well, if there's a word that exists, there must be something that's not that word, right? If there's a word called presence, there must be something like the absence of presence, right? Otherwise, why do you have a word for it? You could say it's the same thing about God. There's got to be something that's not God, otherwise, why have a word, right? But in this realm, we're really discovering the one thing that has no opposite, essentially. And this is where it gets tricky with language, right? Because actually, a word like presence, a word like being, a word like God has no opposite. There's no lack of being. There's no non-being, is there? There's just being. There's no non-presence. What would that look like? A moment where presence was absent would be present as that moment, right? So there's no opposite to presence. In that sense, the word is evocative, maybe, of a kind of primal quality of reality, but it can be misleading in the sense that we start thinking like, oh, there's presence, and then there's non-presence, or the opposite of presence, the absence of presence, and it's not like that. So this is what I'm constantly trying to sort of point to, is in the case of presence, the presence that I'm, really interested in is the presence that doesn't come and go. That's just always what's here. It is what's here, the presence of reality. I was thinking about different things that we kind of hear about and aspire to realize through any number of means, with countless books being written about them. An interesting one is flow, right? Like getting into the flow. There's a whole school of thought about flow, and developed by this psychologist, or sort of spearheaded by him. And that sense of like, well, now I'm really in the flow. And then, as opposed to times when I'm not in the flow, you see what I mean? Like, it's the same sort of model of, there's the presence of flow, and then there's the potential non-flow, absence, or the opposite of flow, which is, we understand that conceptually, and we can even experience like, oh my God, things aren't really going smoothly. They're not flowing smoothly. I'm either worried about something, thinking too much about things. I'm getting kind of in my own way. It's not really flowing. But the flow, the really, really, the transcendental, if you will, flow that transcends opposites, is the flow of reality itself. There's nothing but flow, is there? It's never absent. Do you feel that? One, what we could describe as a moment, effortlessly becoming the next unfolding, the next unfolding. It's not really like that, but I'm trying to use words to capture that sense of the unfolding of reality, the flow of experiencing. You feel that. And you don't have to do anything to make it happen, do you? You don't have to get yourself into the flow. You are the flow of reality. You see? Each instant releasing effortlessly, right? Seeming to arise, suggesting an appearance of something, a manifestation of that moment, but really the appearance, the moment of manifestation is the moment of its passing, right? So that's the flow. It's just like a river, right? The river just moves, doesn't have a stop button. That's the flow of reality. And what we might think of as the noticing of that flow is itself more of the flow, isn't it? So we can take the flow and divvy it up into all these different aspects of the flow, the flow of thought and the flow of sound and the flow of sensation and the flow of thinking and the flow of perceiving and the flow of circumstance and right, the flow of energy, all this flow, all these different aspects of the flow, but underlying, you could say, again, one of reality's primal, if you will, qualities. It's ultimately beyond all the qualities in terms of being able to pin down what the qualities are, but um, but we could say flow is one of its primal sort of, yeah, it gets about as close as you can get in some ways to the basis of this. It's flow, never ending. Even our pushing against life that we can feel like we're struggling in some sense, fighting against reality's appearance, arguing with it in some way, um, trying to control it, trying to alter it. All of that also is reality's flow. That's what I mean. It doesn't have there's no non-flow, is there? Try to stop the flow of the moment and try to hold it in place. Get it to fix as something definite. You can't do it, can you? Just continues to open endlessly. It's unstoppable, isn't it? The flow. There's a kind of smoothness to the flow in its unstoppable nature, right? It doesn't, it's not like that. It's just, there's nothing actually ever blocking the flow. This is the thing about there being one thing. In this case, I'm describing it as a ceaseless, effortless flow. There's nothing opposed to that because there's one thing here, right? One flow of reality, no opposition. And so it's free of conflict. It's free of agitation in a sense. Everything is an expression of this flow. Even what we describe as tight grip on life is actually, when you actually look at what's actually there, you always find this ever transforming, ever morphing, fluidity, don't you? You find nothing but fluidity. This is what we're feeling. We're feeling the flow, the unstoppable flow. In its journey, reality's journey of this constant opening, this constant flow, along the way, you could say, hold the words lightly, it has the suggestion of becoming something, right? Identifiable. Like there's a flow of reality, and all of a sudden something comes into view, seemingly like a moment, a feeling, a sense, a sensation, an image. So that's reality's appearance as things that have a kind of fixed nature to them. But the actual feeling of the moment is not fixed. It's very interesting. Like um, somebody just made a comment on I don't know if it was my last like video that I posted from these meetings or not, but they were basically trying to school me about how I had something wrong. And what they were arguing was that I was mixing up the impermanence of experience with the kind of solidity of the world, and like that those are separate things in a sense. And yes, the experience of the computer in front of my eyes is the experience, of course, is ever changing, but there's something, permanent to the object that's being perceived. So, and, but it's very interesting because how do I know, how do I know the object that I'm calling the computer? How do I know it? I know it through different means. I can have ideas about it. So I know it kind of through the thought realm. I can imagine the computer if I close my eyes, like there's my computer, like a visual image. So I know it that way as experience. I know it visually. I can see what I might call an object visually. I can touch it. I put my hands on it right now. I can know it tactily. Um, if I tap on it, I can hear the sound that it makes. My finger touches it. So it's so interesting because the object to this person's sort of comment, um, in one sense, appears with a kind of solidity, substantiality, fixedness to it. Like it's unchanging essentially, right? And you can look at if you're on your computer, you can do the same thing, or look at any object that you think is relatively unchanging. And but the way we know it is as experience, as I was just saying, right? And but the actual experience, we don't experience, this is really odd based on like compared to what we typically think is going on, but we don't experience objects because of this flow. So our actual, if you will, moment to moment experience of this seemingly stable, solid, fixed object that we're looking at, let's say, or holding or touching or hearing, is you feel how ever changing the flow of your experience is of everything that you think of as fixed and solid. There, there's no there's no solidity in our experience. There's no stasis in our experience, is there? There's no things. From the what I call the experiential perspective, there are no things. And our encounter with this is what we sort of overlook. It's all quite innocent. What we think of as a stable, solid, objective world, both of experience of objects, material objects, and also subjective experiences, which we also have names for and talk about as if they're things. There's my fear. There's my happiness, there's my sorrow, there's my joy, there's my insecurity, right? We talk about them like they're things that have names and identities, right? But the experience of all of those things, which is exactly how we know them, actually, has no stability in that sense. In its instability, this flow, um, there are no things. The river doesn't stop to become something, although it strongly suggests that it does. That's its play, to appear as things that have a kind of patternicity to them, identifiable. Oh, there it is. I see it. You can really see how the word ungraspable, has arisen in different traditions to describe the nature of reality, the nature of God. It's ungraspable, right? Because, um, well, how can you grasp hold of the moving river and hold it in place, the flow? You can't stop the flow, so you can't grasp it as a thing because it just continues to morph. You feel that? And this is one of the central reasons that reality is fundamentally inconceivable, empty of identity, which, needless to say, runs counter to, well, everything we think about reality, right? Reality is unthinkable. What you're experiencing right now is unthinkable because of this ceaseless flow, its nature. But therein lies the freedom, freedom from everything, from every limit, from every seeming description or definition. This is without limit, without bound, without framework.